Thanks everyone, and thanks to the three Landcare organisations that have really set up today. I really appreciate the opportunity to run this little program. I'm coming to you from the great lands of the Wiradjuri Nation up here in Dubbo, and like Joel, pay our respects to the elders up here, past, present and emerging. We've got a 3-workshop series coming through. The first workshop is that one there on mindset. So I know there's a lot in this, but I really want to get people starting to think about what is a regenerative business, not just how do you practice regenerative production in the paddock. The next week on the 29th, the next session is about designing. So we're going to have a lot more sort of facts and costs and incomes and graphs and tables. And the last session is very much about what's over the horizon. So we're going to look at things like carbon footprinting, CO2 emissions, carbon balances, measuring, and we have a program called Measure What Matters, and that's going to be a lot about what we're going to cover at that last workshop. Just as the way that I've set this up, I've just put a little statement down here that I've made. You know, we've been involved in Regen Ag up here for around about 25 or so years or more. So I spoke to a lot of our long-term clients about where they saw the next leap forward in Regen Ag, and it was certainly in this business stuff. So everything that I'm going to talk to today has come out of comments that our long-term regen managers have said. And a lot of them sort of said a comment like this, that folks do a fantastic job of regenerating their land in very creative and measurable ways. But this program is going to help people, I hope, to apply that really creative regenerative thinking from the paddock into the business and financial aspects of the resource base. The outcome from today is really understanding about, you know, moving that creative regenerative thinking into the business, creating a regenerative business and talking around the definition of that suits your own unique circumstances. What opportunities might arise from a regenerative mindset, and thinking around what's happening into the future and some of those big picture trends, and how can we create a business that's adapted towards the future. You know, and I think we should be thinking about the new and exciting opportunities that can be creative when we think this way, and how a regenerative business might be expressed in your own circumstances. And it might be through improved profit, but for some people it might be through lower risk or less hours or stress or improved well-being or recognition from customers or other people. It might be the chance to bring back a daughter or a son into the business to develop these new opportunities. So how a regenerative business outcome is expressed, that's over to you folks in your own individual business. We're all on a learning journey here, and I don't want anyone to think I'm an absolute expert in this stuff. It's a new and emerging field, but I'm really happy to share my regenerative journey over the last 25 years, capture some of the learning from other long-term farmers in this field, but I want you guys to take and apply what suits your own need. Each farm is different, each business is different. Take what and apply what suits your own need. And in doing that, we have great respect for the difference that exists in the people that are on the Zoom today, and we don't want to be prescriptive at all. But do be intentional. You know, do act with some degree of urgency, applying your regenerative knowledge, whether it be out in the paddock or whether it be into the business. There is some assumed knowledge. I'm not going to give a great overview to what is Regen Ag. To me, if you're interested in learning more about Regen Ag, there are 3 key resources that I suggest you look at. Charlie Massey's book, Dark Emu, which gives a fantastic overview to an Aboriginal history of Australia. And to me, I think it's imperative reading for every single Australian, as well as every single land manager. And it's certainly changed my view about many things. So it's a terrific resource. And of course, Alan Sovery's Holistic Management, which to me is the source document for Regen Ag, Alan's work, which is going back over 50 years now. There's also a huge amount of publications out there. There's a huge amount of websites, Facebook groups. You know, some of the Regen Ag Facebook groups have, well, some of the overseas ones have 15,000 members. there's 600 posts a day in some of them. So, and particularly, the Central Vic Regen Ag groups and conservation farming groups and multi-species cropping groups, there's wonderful information out there now for you. Lots of podcasts and videos. If everyone wants more info, drop me an email and I can send you some links on that. Managing regeneratively, in my mind, starts with understanding holistic management, understanding the ecosystem processes, what's happening above and below ground and how nature works, and understanding the importance of biodiversity. I think the other key point is, in the long run, all management has to be holistic. It's got to balance the land health, people's well-being, and the financial components of the resource base. So today we're going to talk a lot about the financial components, but it's in that holistic context. It's not separated out from what's happening in the landscape. I think understanding your holistic goal or your own individual holistic context shapes your decisions and also those of the business. So the framework that you use to make decisions out in the paddock should be the same framework that you're using in the business. And you can assess those decisions with the 7 checking questions that comes in that holistic management framework to make sure any decision that you're making is good financially for you, good ecologically for you, and socially and from a well-being perspective, good for the humans. And monitoring is such an important component. And the last session I'll talk about in this 3-session workshop is about measuring what matters. It's all about monitoring and course correcting, because nature changes. Our business needs to be adaptive to change to the circumstances. And of course, we have this sort of planning process too, which is really important in the holistic management. So, that's an overview. If that's the first understanding you've had to regenerative agriculture, holistic management, you want to know more, drop me an email and I can give you some resources. This little presentation has come from the Savory Institute website, and I think it's really important because, to me, it talks about sort of the management aspects of holistic management, the practical stuff of managing, planning our landscapes with a number of paddocks and tree plantations and all sorts of stuff. It talks about our sort of financial cash flow management, talks about our grazing management, which we love talking about, which is really interesting. But we need to understand, has our mindset changed around the ecosystem and how we see it? Do we have a holistic goal or holistic context? And is our thinking really holistic? So today I really want to talk about our mindset, because I think our mindset shapes our business and our financial results. So we want to bring that wonderful thinking that a lot of folks have about that truly creative, regenerative mindset out in the paddock. And it amazes me when I go on farm. I'm on farm probably 2 or 3 days a week, depending on what's happening time of year. It amazes me how creative people are with the way that they run their animals, what they do, their infrastructure, if they're croppers, the amazing stuff that the multi-species croppers are doing, incredibly creative. Wouldn't it be great to use that same level of creativity around the financial aspects of our business? So what is a regenerative business? What creates a regenerative business? I think a regenerative business is creatively unique. It's yours. It should show measurable improvements over time in your ecosystem, your soils, the diversity, predominantly driven by the ecosystem, not a high input type approach. It should produce enough profit to sustain current and planned future financial needs and builds up financial health. Just as we're talking about a regenerative business should build soil health, should build biodiversity and diversity above and below ground, well, the regenerative business should build up financial health over time, and we should be able to measure that. It should also build the well-being of the people over time, and it should be measurable, and it should also be orientated towards the future. And I think a regenerative business should be looking to the long-term future. It should be thinking forwards 30 or 50 years and thinking about some of the challenges and opportunities that might be happening. So we want to create an adaptive business that's well suited to the future, not perfectly adapted to the past. I want to go through the 10 guiding principles of a regenerative business. Now, this has come out of some of the discussions and the workshops and the surveys that I've done with a number of long-term regenerative business managers, and some of them have been very successful from a financial and a landscape point of view. Okay, so top left here, management should be holistic. So when we start to think around a regenerative business, we don't want to go off feral and think, okay, let's just focus on money. No, we want to think about our business performance in the framework that it must be holistic. So we're not going to run off and do things that are good financially, but aren't in consideration of our land health or our people's well-being. So everything that we talk about, and as we move through the workshop today, I want to get more and more specific about ideas about how you might do things, and then what you might want to do as ideas and options for you, more and more specific. But all of those things must fit into that sort of holistic framework. Folks, one of the things I've noticed as a farm consultant is I work with a lot of families, and we do work with quite a few traditional, conventional folks, and they all do get a dose of regenerative agriculture as well. But a lot of traditional, conventional management advice is very much at almost the enterprise level. It's very prescriptive, if you like. It's very almost simplistic. Do this and you'll get this result. And it's unfortunately not always sitting into that complex or systems type framework. So it might look very good from a financial perspective, but the question is, well, how does that impact on the landscape long term? How does that impact on the people's well-being long term? Does that move that family towards their long-term holistic goal, holistic context? So one of the things I think about that management must be holistic, it brings in understanding of complex and systems thinking that isn't unfortunately always there in that sort of conventional management. And I think that's a lot of tension that we often have as I work with my colleagues in that sort of conventional farm management area, is a lot of the advice is very much given from a silo, the silo of finance. If you do this, you'll be more profitable. But how does that impact on the landscape, and how does that impact on the people? And that's often where we have this tension. So I think that helps explain the difference in holistic thinking versus maybe that more simplistic thinking that maybe isn't coming from a systems perspective. The next point I'd like to move across into is that holistic management, Regen Ag, is very much values driven. It's driven by each family's unique set of values, which are specific to their context. And it's very much goal focused. So as an advisor, as a coach, the most important thing I can do is to make sure people are very clear about the future, very clear about their values. So anything that I have to offer must be in context with those values and the future. And the long-term goal, that 30 to 50-year horizon, is very important because we can then make decisions in relation to that. If we don't have a sense of that and a sense of those guiding values, then unfortunately we can't give really good advice. And I think that's a really powerful part of the regen business, is to start to think around, okay, what is the business going to look like into the future? What is the landscape going to look like? What are our guiding values, if you like? And how does our business now fit with that? And that creates opportunities, that sort of discussion. The next thing I'd like to talk around was how important it was to get everyone working together, the team, including their advisors, the accountant or the banker, or their own sort of consultants. how important it was to have good communication and open communication amongst families so that we could all be on the one page and work together so that each person can bring their own unique characteristics into the regen business so that we're working together and not apart. And how important it was to course correct and keep adapting based on monitoring and measuring what matters. So I think that whole people dynamic is so important to running a really good regen business and a creative regen business so that each person can express themselves in that business. The other thing through the surveys and discussions was respecting the uniqueness of each farm, each family, and each business. And to me, I think the understanding that is really important. And as we move into next week's session, as I show you some financial indicators and performance drivers and all of that sort of information and graphs and tables, we've got to bring that back to the fact that each family is unique. Their farm is unique and their business and their future that they want to create is unique. So that information then has to get weighed up for each family in relation to their own context, their own goal and their own set of values. So we really do want to move away from recipes. We want to move away from an assumption that everyone needs to be in the top 20% on financial performance or has to be. We need to move back to say, what is your long-term perspective? What is your context? What are your values? And how does this information provide quality information that you can weigh up and apply for yourself? And let's get into it. Not everyone is the same. So we need to respect that uniqueness. We do need to learn from the past, absolutely. And we need to bring forward information and learning from the past that's applicable, but we do need to adapt it for the future. We need to create this adaptive business. And I think that that's really, really important. That it amazes me how creative regen folks are out in the paddock with all of that really cool stuff about grazing and the production techniques and how adaptive they are about looking at animals' dung and gut fill and landscape and really delving into species change and composition and all that stuff. That's fantastic. And it adapts. They keep learning and that feeds back into doing things differently and better based on learning. And I think we can learn from the past financially as well and adapt based on that information into the future in our business. So it might be we can tweak our enterprises or tweak what we're doing and how we're doing it. Or it might be a big change. We can look at the capital in the business and we can sell some things that aren't really needed and we can invest that capital in another part of the business. So looking at past financial performance and thinking about the future and where the business wants to go is a great way of adapting and learning financially, but just having that constant adaptation process is important. A regen business creates enough financial profit to meet the current and future needs of the people. Now, folks, as we move through, we're going to talk around orientating your business, your regen business, to achieve the level of profit that you need in that business. Now, this is a whole new mindset, I think. Rather than saying we need to get an extra % return on capital or we've got to be in the top 20% because that makes us a good producer, whatever those messages are, we just want to step outside that and say, ultimately, your business needs to create enough financial resources, profit, to meet the needs of the people now and the planned needs into the future. It needs to provide a decent living for the people. It needs to create a level of profit that allows for a bit of debt reduction, if that's relevant, or a holiday, if that's relevant, or renovating the kitchen, if that's relevant, or reinvesting back into the business, if that's relevant, or saving for the future, succession planning, retirement, expansion. Whatever it is in your own unique circumstances, your regenerative business needs to create a level of profit that meets your current needs for living and the planned future needs or education of kids. Okay, so that each now regenerative business has its own profit target. And that's what we want to orientate the business towards. Your individual profit target, that's highly relevant to the people in that business, because it doesn't really matter if someone else is higher or lower, you know. And as you go through the phases of life and ages in your own farming career, there'll be times when that profit target needs to be higher. There'll be times when that profit target perhaps doesn't need to be as high. And so therefore our business is shaped to create the level of profit that is enough now and in the long term that's highly relevant to that individual business. And it might be different to the neighbouring business. So that's a big mindset change. I think we need to be really careful that if you want to increase your profit, then do this, this and this. Well, that doesn't take into account a person's resource base that they have, what their future is in terms of their own goals, their values. It's a very strong recipe approach. Now, that's useful to learn from, but in terms of applying, it doesn't mean it's going to be relevant to every single family. So we've got to be discerning around recipes. Folks have got to run their own race in their regenerative business. Use information that's out there by all means. Use research, use the benchmarking type figures and financial indicators, but then bring it back to your own circumstance. Does this apply? How does it apply? Could we adapt it to apply? And be aware of the paradigms that exist out there in agriculture about what does create profit. You know, that doesn't mean that's going to be relevant in your own circumstances to you in your regenerative business. So be discerning about how you apply that and be wary of those recipes that exist out there. Be creative and innovative, just as you are out in the paddock with the production aspects of your regen business. Now bring that same thought pattern, creativity, into your business and work on improving yourselves too. You know, we have a great client who says our business can only advance at the rate that we advance. So they spend a lot of time learning, and that's a big part of their business. And network, co-learning, learning from others. You know, we're not competing here. None of the people here today on this Zoom are competing. We can all share. And Regen Ag is new, it's exciting. We all don't have to drive in the one pothole. If we learn our experiences, we all benefit. So networking and co-learning, we're all on a journey. I'm on a learning journey. Let's share our knowledge, things that work and things that don't work. And most importantly, find your purpose, find your why, find why it is that you're in Regen Ag and make a difference through your purpose. Apply your knowledge, apply your passions and enjoy the journey and the people that you're journeying with, because it should be enjoyable and it should be rewarding. And if it's not, change, because that's the journey that we're all on. The next thing I'd just like to talk in, which came out from, again, the discussions with the long-term regen managers, is just some concepts around what creates a regenerative mindset for a business. Now, folks, I really want to try and get across this distinction between the production aspects of your business, grazing management, lambing percentages, weaning rates, all that really good stuff that we need to be good at, and just rising above that and thinking about the dollars and cents aspect of that. You know, separating out the productive aspects of the business from the sort of financial aspects of the business. Both are important and they're all intertwined and interlinked, but we really want to think around that concept of income minus cost equals profit. Is this paying its way? How am I going in the business level in terms of the financial aspects that I need to sustain my family now and into the future, to reinvest back in my business and all of those sort of things. So let's think around that sort of businessy mindset. So coming out of those discussions and the surveys, 5 key really important points about the mindset aspect. And the first most important thing is people said how important it was to be clear around what your purpose was. Now, for the folks that have done some holistic management training, we have a thing called a holistic goal or a holistic context that is quite a descriptive view of your long-term future. Okay, and the first part of that is about saying, what is your purpose? Okay, what is it that you're trying to achieve in your business? But more importantly, why? You know, and I think the understanding the why is absolutely fundamental. The next thing is about you guys working out what in your business is your own individual profit target that's highly relevant to you and your business. What is your profit target, and how motivated are you around profit? And how does that apply to risk? Shaping your business around past performance and understanding why profit is important. Now, Simon Sinek is a consultant. He's fantastic. I really enjoy his stuff. And he talks a lot about this golden circle. I really like it because when you understand it, a lot of folks tend to talk about what they do, you know, where we run cattle, we crop, we do this or we do that, we do sheep. Then they also talk a little bit about how they do it. You know, we do multi-species cropping, or we've got 15 paddocks, our recovery period, our graze period, and a lot about the how we do things. We're permaculture, we're biodynamic, we're organic. But to me, the real fundamental and the power is why are you doing that? You could do anything. Why are you doing it that way? When you understand that and you work within your why, it unites and it energizes people. And one of those 10 key principles of a regen business is teamwork and communication and working together. And there is no more powerful or better way than getting people to work in their why. Now, you can read a bit of the Simon Sinek stuff to understand and the stats around how important that is. And he's done the research around that. Why is not about making money. Why is about your values and your purpose, your deeply held beliefs that shapes how you do things and what you do. So when we go into this next session, I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking around what is your why, our values that underpin that. Now, you may be very clear on your why, but I suppose the question is, are people that you're working with in your business, are they also sharing that same why? Are you working on the same page, so as to speak? And I think that's really, really important. Your why starts with a statement which is less than 20 words, okay? And then you can use that to move into a bigger picture, holistic context or a goal for yourself, which is far more descriptive. I think your why is deeply individual and deeply personal. It's yours. It's got no buzzwords. It's only for your own use. It comes not just from your heart, but your guts, your feeling, from your lizard brain, if you like. It's developed over time. Less is more. You know, less words with higher meaning helps describe your why. Your people that you're working with in your business should deeply connect to it, And I ran a workshop where we were honing some of these materials with people and we were discussing it. And a person said in the workshop, she read out their business why, and she said every time she reads it, she tears up and her hair stands up because it's so deeply important to her. And it unites their business and energizes them when they're clear on what it is and why they're doing things. And it's so energizing. So when we get people deeply connected to their why and energized, it releases a whole lot of positive energy and a whole lot of enthusiasm, and off we go. So if you're in the sausage factory and you're just feeling it's not working quite well, don't think about what you're doing and how you do it. Think about why and why you're actually doing these things, and deeply connect to your why. In the little breakout group, someone asked the question, I got the acid on me about some of the things about how those principles apply in our business. And one of the things that Cassie and I have done is we've spent quite a bit of time thinking about our why and documenting it. So we've gone through the same process of, starting broad, and our why now is, I think, about 10 words. That is deeply important to us, which drives how we do things and what we do, that we're connected to our why. So off you go, folks. That's going to be a little bit of your homework that'll come to you tomorrow, is for everyone to start to think around those 20 words that describes why you're doing things. This is our why. Why we do things in our business is this. This visual came from not far from us. That was our visual 2 years ago as I was looking at our window here in winter. Okay? Why we do things is this, because that could be my granddaughter or my great-granddaughter. Okay, so what's your why? This is why we do this in our business. We help farmers heal the land because it needs it. Now, for the time we got left, I really want to punch into sort of some of the more practical take-homey stuff, so you can have a good think around that. Some of the key things I really want to talk about there, you can read that statement as I'm talking about. I really want to get across by the end of today how important it is to have that profit target for you that describes the level of profit your business needs in that. Profit is essential for any business. Cassie, my wife, runs a little business out the back and shares an office out the back there, and she runs a not-for-profit business. Another way of saying it, that business is not for loss either. So even though you mightn't be highly motivated towards profit, profit is still very important. All businesses need to make a profit. Some businesses might need to make less profit than others. What's really important is, I think, in a regenerative business, you, in your business, working with the people you do, defines the level of profit you need to sustain your business now and into the future. And then, how many years out of 10 can you achieve it, which is about risk. Okay, so I think a lot of conventional farm management advice assumes farmers want to maximise profit or be in the top 20% or get 10% return on assets managed. That approach can be absolutely debilitating to a lot of farmers, because to be in the top 20%, only 20% of people can be there. Okay, so a lot of folks get really debilitated because they don't think they're a good operator. They're not in the top 20%. And it can be debilitating to landscapes who are overworked in order to achieve that prescribed approach. Regenerative approach to business means you start with your profit target that's highly relevant to you, given your profit motivation and needs, and then the business is shaped to achieve that repeatably 8 years out of 10. This is a group that I worked with of regen agriculturalists last year, quite a large group. And here were the questions down the bottom, the same questions that you had in that survey. And I've just added together all responses, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what it is for that group, they were highly motivated around a satisfactory level of income. That group was less motivated around maximising income, keeping out of debt, or some of them were motivated to safeguarding income. But the main profit motivator of those 4 questions was getting a satisfactory level of income. Let's define for you in your business what a satisfactory level of income is now and into the future. They were highly motivated around leaving the farm in good or better condition, this group, and improving biodiversity. Okay, so when we think about a regen business, working in your why is important to mindset. The next thing is, what are your goals? For this group, it was creating a satisfactory level of income, let's define it, and leaving the farm in good or better condition, improving biodiversity. Let's work on some strategies that actually do that. But there were 24 responses to that question, same questions that you had to score 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, your priorities. Our group is really highly motivated towards growing good crops, pastures and stock, leaving the farm in good or better condition, and improving biodiversity. That was a really strong motivations for our group. Our group here today, if we look at the 4 profit questions, was more motivated around a satisfactory level of income. Well, let's define it. Some people had scored maximising income, keeping out of debt and safeguarding income. Okay, so folks, I send this out to all families because I think it's really useful for everyone to start to think around what are our motivations in our regen business. Okay, if your profit motivations are quite low, as a group, they are in our group, it doesn't mean that we still shouldn't be making a profit as a business. One of the things that really motivated me to this sort of program is a lot of folks that are being involved in Regen Ag are highly motivated, which is good, towards the productive aspects, the paddock type level stuff. Really motivated towards growing good crops and good pastures and stock, which is fantastic. Really good about improving biodiversity and planting trees, which is awesome. And really good about ground cover and leaving their farm in good or better conditions, which is awesome. They're also almost highly unmotivated around the profitability aspects. So folks, I just want to get across, this is really good, these motivations for us. But the other part is we've got to make sure that we achieve enough profit for us that allows us to do that. Okay, and this is the whole motivation for this program, is that we've got to bring together now the really good practical stuff of Regen Ag and put it into a profitability and business framework. So the first way to do that is to start to really understand our profit motivation. So even though you might say, oh, this business doesn't have to make a lot of profit, I've got off-farm assets or I've got off-farm income or whatever, still doesn't mean that farm doesn't have to make a profit. What level of profit does it need to make? And are you running the right enterprises in the right way that allows it to make that profit 8 years out of 10? So that's what we want to do these sort of quizzes for. I'd encourage everyone to have a look at their own responses and look at their profit motivations and look at their other motivations and start to shape their businesses around the things that are important, but also the things that maybe not so good at too. We all need to be good enough on achieving a level of profit. So the profit target is really important, and you're going to have the opportunity, A, to work on your why between now and the next meeting, but B, I'm going to send you out a little worksheet, which we'll see in a sec, where you get to define your own individual profit target, which is highly relevant to you. So in doing that, the question is, what are the financial needs of the people now and into the future? You know, if you have kids, what are the likely needs that you might face? If your kids are independent or you don't have kids, that's fine too. What are your needs now and into the future? Debt reduction, holidays, reinvestment back onto the farm in fences or tree plantations or laneways, all that sort of stuff that makes you think, well, how are you going to fund that? What does the level of profit need to be into the business now and in the future? What do your living costs need to be that you'd say, that's good, that's satisfactory to us? Let's define that. And then ask ourselves, how many years out of 10 has that business achieved that or could achieve that as we look forward if it's a new business? And it's highly individual, and that's fine. Profit is essential. You can't have a regen business that does really good stuff in the paddock that's not profitable. But the profit is relevant to you. How much is enough for your family short and long term? Calculate it, define it, and that should be embedded into your holistic context or holistic goal. We want to then work backwards and run a business that can do that 8 years out of 10, lower risk. And I'll talk about that in the next session. We'll look at some figures and graphs and tables. Okay, so it's really important that we have our own profit target. And once you have your own profit target, you don't have to worry about the buy-in when you pick up the stock and land or the weekly times or the land about what other people are doing. It's about you guys achieving your own profit target that's highly relevant. If you don't have a profit target, the problem is someone might have one for you. There's a lot of selling that goes on and You know, a lot of information comes into agriculture and farmers about assumptions about what you need to do to make profit and your motivations. And some of that can be unhelpful. Be clear about your why, be clear about your own profit target, and create a plan that achieves it in your own business. So I'm going to send you out this very simple spreadsheet that's going to ask you to think around what level of profit do you need in the business. That then becomes your drawings or your wage, and then creates the sort of things that you might like to need to create in your own business into the future, so that you actually come up with your business profit target that's highly relevant to you in your own business, because that's the level of profit the business must achieve in order to create the profit target. And then we need, in the next few sessions that we have, we can work backwards and say, hey, is our current enterprise mix capable of achieving that profit? And how many years out of 10 can we achieve that? Is the other question, isn't it? How do we define profit? Well, look, there's many ways is going to achieve profit. To me, I think the first thing is there are three forms of profit. Cash profit, which is cash in minus cash out. That's a measure of profit, and that's a very powerful measure. I think there's another measure which I'll define as management, which takes into account changes of inventory. And I think that's the ultimate level of profit that we're taking into account. Because if we're building up our stock numbers, that's an unrealised profit. So we need to take that into account. So if you've only got cash profit, start with that. But over time, when we want to move into more what I'll call a management version of profit that takes into account change of inventory. I'm not talking tax profit, because that's something that accountants do, which is heavily influenced by tax law, which doesn't refer a lot to what we're talking about here. So no, you need to move backwards from your accountant's figures into management figures, I think. So if you've got cash figures, use them, but understand there can be limitations around that, around inventory changes. So I'll talk a little bit about that in the next session about defining profit. I think it's really important that each person, if you're running a business, is very clear about what are the trends over time. The trend is your friend. What are the trends in income? What are the trends in costs? What are the trends in production levels? What are the trends over your land? You know, things like ground cover and species, distance to perennial, carbon levels, all those sort of things that you can measure. What are the trends over time in people and people's well-being? You can measure too, people's satisfaction. So someone mentioned, well, what should you measure? I'd say measure what matters in your business. You know, what are the income measures? What are the cost measures? What are the production measures? What are the land health measures? And what are the people measures? That's highly relevant in your business, because that's what you want to measure over time. And what are the trends? Are you achieving your calculated profit target? And how many years out of 10? Okay, so let's get a profit target and set a plan to achieve it in our regen business that's entirely consistent with our why and is entirely consistent with the land changes we want to make and is entirely consistent to the people's values and their well-being. I think the other thing that as we learn more about our business is where is the capital invested in the business and is that the right place for it? Agriculture can be a very capital-intensive business. I've been working with a family out the road and we've done a lot of work over the last sort of 18 months. And they're coming to realise that they have a lot of capital tied up in machinery that they no longer need as they start to use animals as a tool and on the landscape and subdivide their paddocks and start to use grazing and recovery to regenerate their landscape. They don't need to sow things anymore. They don't need to spread things anymore. And they don't need to cut and store hay because now it's stored in days in the paddock. So then they're saying, well, hang on, we've got $100,000 of machinery. Is that the right place for it in that capital? Could we put it into fencing or water or more livestock or other things? So I think when you're clear about where is the capital invested in your business and is that a high marginal return place for it, you might be able to reinvest it back into other areas of the business. When you understand the trends over time in your business and are you achieving your profit target, we can start to think about What are the capital investments we can make on the land that will help us move us forward to where we want to go in a faster way? Are we using animals as a tool in the way that we could? Do we have a graze recover management? Does the how-tos in our farm include graze recover and grazing planning? Does it involve things like the number of species? Are we building biodiversity? Are we improving our ground cover? Are we measuring those sort of changes? And I think the more that you look at your trends over time, you'll start to understand what's going well and what's not going well. And in the next session, I want to show you some case studies of that. What is the weak link that's holding you back each year? And are you fixing it? At the moment, the weak link in the business is up our way is we don't have enough animals. So what can we do to fix that? You know, do we go out into the marketplace, or do we get some adjustment, or do we do some other things? You know, what is it in your own unique business that's holding you back, and are we fixing it? The trend is your friend. If we go back in time, we can pick up some learning from our own business. If we're in a new business, let's look forward and look at maybe the next couple of years in our business, and what are the trends in income, cost, production, land, and people? Because climates, markets, opportunities are changing, your business needs to be dynamic and adaptive. The most specific information around income and costs is the stuff in your own business. We can look at other businesses, and I'll show you some of that, but that doesn't mean that information or those trends are relevant to your business. So setting up your business so you can see trends over time in some of these key areas is absolutely vital in your own business, because that's the only business that's directly comparable to yours. So what is your profit target? Is your business shaped to achieve that profit target? Profit is the most important part of your business, the financial part. If you were to calculate your own profit target and then shape the business to achieve it, the next thing we can go and say is profit is the most important use of the dollars that come in. Profit contains our living and our future. It expresses our values and our hopes and desires into the future. Therefore, profit is your first expense. So in your business, if you have $100,000 comes into your business, the first expense in your business is profit. You've got to think about that. The first allocation out of the money that comes in the regenerative business is your planned profit. Take it out of your business and put it somewhere else as your first priority. It contains your living and your goals and your future. Take it out. As your income comes in every month or every quarter or lumpy, take out your planned profit as the first priority, not the last. Planning and achieving a profit is really important in a regenerative business. In fact, it's so important that the planned profit, your target, is taken out first and put aside into a set-aside account, and then run your farm on the discounted income level. Now, that's a real mindset change. I understand that. It's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? However, I think it's a better mindset than allowing profit to dribble out the end after all expenses if things go well. So that's part of the holistic management wealth creation process. If people want more info about that, flick me an email because there's a lot about it. So as your income comes into your business and you know your profit target, start to allocate your profit out first. Put it to a set-aside account and run your business on that reduced expenses. And at the end of the year, if that works, you will have structured and built in a profit into that business. That's the wealth creation process, if you like, there. So there's a lot in that. I think thinking this way creates some magnificent opportunities in Regen Ag. If we can think around the principles underpinning Regen Ag, if we can start to think about our mindset, I think if we can start to think our business differently and think about profit differently and create our own individual unique profit target, if we work within our why, all of those things can create a different type of business. That business has a wonderful story. If we can measure changes in the landscape, if we can measure changes in our profit, measure well-being changes for our people, that's the next module, measure what matters. If we can do those sort of things, we create a story. We differentiate our product in the marketplace. We can move from the commodity arena into the branded product value-added arena if we want to. We can have a unique story about what we're doing and how we're doing it. We can create a brand if we want to around that. We can market if we want to, and we can partner with a whole range of different people around that story. So here's some examples, if you like. This is Michael Hicks and Alex from Extraordinary Pork, and you can have a look at their story. This is exactly what they've done. They have a fantastic story around their regenerative journey, and that might appeal to some people. Here are three farmers, the Aviards, the Morris family and the Stewart family, Outback Lamb, Farmer Brown's Pastured Eggs, and the Gourmet Goat Lady, that's Jo. They've all bulked together. They're working in their why, they're sharing their stories. The stories are compatible. They have the same problem, getting their freight to market. They've actually bought the truck together. They've started a little business called Three Farmers Freight. They have this little truck that goes around, and they're collaborating, sharing and networking together. They're helping to co-sell each other's products. Provenir is a mobile abattoir, which is another opportunity that folks have taken up. It's an abattoir that comes on farm and kills, and you can sell. It's a licensed abattoir. That's not it, but that's an example of someone else that's created a micro abattoir so they can now kill and sell animals on their own farm. This is Artisan Baker in Sydney that is now sourcing his grain from regenerative produced farms. And this is what the baker says. As he's called them, the legends of the regen ag world. You know, your product, by following the sort of things that we've been talking about in regen ag, is now differentiated from folks in the commodity market. That differentiation based on your story can create a higher value market for the people that want to do that. Here's a whole lot more. This is Gilgai Farms that direct markets its beef, selling and telling the story of what they do and how they're doing it. Regional Platters is a farm tourism program run by 5 regional councils up our way that banded together and pre-COVID has farm tours on regen farms. So people come and have a look and get that story. And it's become an enterprise to the contributing farms, telling the regen story. Here's Farmer Brown's Happy Hens Eggs, as we call. And that's Huey out in the paddock. They've stacked an enterprise on there, into their regen business that is growing grain and animals. And they're now starting to sell eggs right into Sydney. It's become a huge business around their story. Fiona with their Outback Lamb, it's another story. So, and the Gourmet Goat. So there's a whole lot of stories. I love this story here. This is Farm Smith. This is their story. This is Trish Smith, who in the COVID periods lost her job. She now has an urban farm in the Blue Mountains, and she's selling salad, and she's making compost and selling it. She has a business now that's based on her own urban farm. And on a big scale, this is Simon Cameron from Kingston down in Tasmania. He has a carbon positive farm. He's capturing and storing more carbon on his farm than he's emitting. He's got a relationship with MJ Bale, who buys his whole clip, the Kingston clip now, and makes men's suits out of. MJ Bale are paying Kingston $500,000 over the next 5 years to buy their whole clip and to be able to sell the Kingston story of capturing and storing carbon as they sell their suits. Their suits aren't cheap and they sell out very quickly because of the power of the story. I'm going to talk next about carbon footprinting and how important that is for regen ag to be able to capture and store more carbon than you're emitting. It's going to be part of the businesses of the future. And so as we think about a regen business, it's not just now, it's also into the future. Where does your farm sit? What's your farm's carbon footprint? How many kilograms of carbon or CO2 equivalents are you producing per kilogram or kilogram of beef or lamb or per litre of milk? What are you producing on that? And how can we sell that story into the marketplace and differentiate yourself from the bulk agriculture story? So I'm going to cover a bit of that in the last module, but I think it's a really important part of the business of the future is to be saying it's a differentiated business and there's an opportunity for folks that want to take that up. So there's a whole range of stories that we're going to talk around at the next module of case studies of how people can develop other aspects and other income streams around their regenerative business. You know, starting with your why, understanding the principles, having a regen business mindset, using the creativity that people have out in the paddock to express that in the financial components of their business, and maybe creating diversified income streams, not by doing much more, but just telling your regen story. There's a whole range of enterprise opportunities through share grazing, some person's land, other person's animals, and sharing the profit, of leasing, of partnering, of pre-selling, the tours and regional platters, the capacity to tell your story and for people to come on a bus and hear that and pay you for that if that's your deal. Accommodation and the importance around urban farms and how people can create a regenerative business on an eighth or a quarter of an acre. It doesn't have to be big. That's just a mindset change, isn't it, about scale? So, folks, I'd just like to bring home the bacon in the short period is plan your regen business on paper first and be creative around that and have a profit target and make sure your business can achieve that 8 years out of 10. Pay yourself an agreed amount of money each month, which is your wage. Don't just draw money as you need it. Work out your monthly profit target and put it aside into another account. Or if it's lumpy, take it out of each lump and put your profit into another account. Plan to achieve a profit and then put it aside so you achieve it. Talk to your kids and other family members about the farm and the business and communicate. Feel in control and feel that you're working in your why. So we need to be clear about the why. Take time out to enjoy your family, your life and your farm and balance things and work on yourself too, folks. You know, I hope this Zoom series is going to be a catalyst for you folks to say, gosh, you know, a light bulb, we can do a lot of different things here. So start with your why, and then we're going to drift in the next 2 Zooms into the how and into the what. But you've got to start with the why. Folks, don't coast in this. If there's opportunities you've seen here, be intentional. Do the homework. We're setting it up for you so you can apply some of your knowledge. Expect the email tomorrow. And next week's Zoom is going to be a lot more about data, a lot more about case studies, a lot more about marketing, and a lot more about the regenerative story that creates opportunities for yourself and how you might go around creating that in your own business. Expect that email. Please allocate around about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes between now and next Thursday's Zoom to do your homework. Some of it is for your own purposes and use. Some of it can be shared in the workshops that we'll have. But I want you to start to think around your mindset and some of the key drivers of a regen business based on that experience harvested from the long-term regen managers. How can you pick what's needed in your own business and bring it back in? So let's start with the mindset. Let's start with the goal and the purpose, and let's start to apply some of these ideas in a way that picks what you need and what's applicable and drives the business from a financial perspective around your own personal profit target, no one else's. And let's work backwards and shape that business to achieve your own profit target.